Africa's hidden medical legacy, the surprising surgery that shocked the world. In the heart of Africa, long before the British Empire ever claimed a foothold on this land, before European medicine began to understand the dangers of infection, there existed a kingdom where healers performed miracles of life and science. A place where ancestral knowledge met surgical precision and mothers survived the impossible. This is not myth. This is not legend. This is the true story of Bunyoro in present-day Uganda, where African surgeons performed caesarean sections with skill and success that stunned the modern world. In the 19th century, the Bunyoro Kingdom stood as one of the most sophisticated societies in East Africa. Rich in ironwork, governance, and medicine, the Banyoro people lived under a well-organized system ruled by the Omukama, their king. But hidden within their society was something that even the Western world had yet to master, a medical tradition so advanced it challenged the very foundations of European science. While in Europe, women often died in childbirth from infection and blood loss, in Bunyoro, local surgeons had developed their own system of sterile surgery, centuries ahead of their time. In the year 1879, a young British medical missionary named Dr. Robert William Felkin traveled deep into Uganda. He came as an observer, a man of science, eager to study the people he had been told were primitive. But what he witnessed in Bunyoro would shatter every assumption he carried about Africa and medicine. One morning, Felkin was invited to witness a birth, not an ordinary one, but a surgical operation. A pregnant woman was in distress, the baby was struggling, and her life hung in the balance. And so, in a thatched hut in the kingdom of Banyoro, surrounded by healers and family, an African surgeon prepared to perform a caesarean section. Felkin watched in silence. His European training told him what he was about to see was impossible. But what unfolded before his eyes would rewrite history. The patient was laid on a low bed of grass. She was given banana wine, not for celebration, but for anesthesia. She drank it until her body relaxed and her pain dulled. Then, the same banana wine was poured over her abdomen. A ritual, yes, but also a scientific act. It served as an antiseptic, cleansing the skin before the incision. The surgeon, a tall, calm man, washed his hands with the same wine. His knife, forged from local iron, had been sterilized in fire. Without hesitation, he made a swift, precise incision down the abdomen. Assistants held back the edges of the wound with sharpened banana leaves, flexible, sterile, and perfect for the task. Felkin's journal later described it in awe. He wrote, "The entire operation was conducted with the greatest neatness, coolness, and skill." The surgeon worked quickly, avoiding unnecessary bleeding. He reached the womb, opened it, and gently lifted the newborn into the world. The umbilical cord was tied, and the baby's first cry filled the hut. But the true genius of the Banyoro surgeon was only beginning to show. After the baby's safe delivery, the healer pressed on the woman's stomach to help the womb contract, a natural method to stop bleeding. He then cleaned the uterus and abdominal cavity with more banana wine, ensuring no blood remained to cause infection. The incision was closed using iron needles and vegetable fiber sutures, likely made from plant material similar to modern surgical thread. Over the wound, he spread a paste of medicinal herbs, natural antiseptics that promoted healing. Felkin noted that the surgeon's assistants kept their hands clean and followed every instruction with precision. Every move was deliberate, every tool had purpose, nothing, absolutely nothing, was left to chance. In those days, even in the best hospitals of London or Paris, a caesarean section was often a death sentence. Infections were common. Many women never lived to hold their children. Yet in that small Ugandan hut,
guided only by ancestral science, both mother and child survived. Felkin stayed to observe. By the third day, the mother was up and walking. The wound showed no sign of infection. The child was healthy and strong. The young British doctor could barely believe what he had seen. When he returned to Europe, he presented his findings to the Edinburgh Medical Journal in 1884, and his words shook the medical world. The European doctors listened in disbelief. How could it be? How could natives, living outside the reach of Western civilization, perform such a complex, sterile, and successful surgery? But Felkin's report was detailed, precise, and undeniable. He wrote, "I have no hesitation in asserting that the operation was conducted with a degree of cleanliness that would be creditable to any European surgeon." His words forced a re-evaluation of the racist assumptions that had painted Africa as a continent without science, without medicine, without innovation. The Bunyoro caesarean became one of the earliest documented cases of aseptic surgery in the world, years before Joseph Lister's antiseptic methods became standard in Europe. But this story wasn't an isolated miracle. Across the continent, African medical traditions were built on observation, experimentation, and generations of recorded knowledge. From the herbal surgeons of Mali, to the bone setters of Ethiopia, to the midwives of the Iwe Kingdom, Africa had long nurtured a deep understanding of anatomy, healing, and hygiene. In Bunyoro, these practices were passed through apprenticeship, refined through centuries of trial and success. The surgeon who operated that day wasn't improvising, he was applying a codified medical system, one that blended natural science and spiritual discipline. Healers like him were scientists in their own right. Their laboratories were forests, their textbooks were generations of living wisdom. Yet as colonization spread across Africa, this brilliance was dismissed, suppressed, and forgotten. Colonial reports would later downplay such achievements, framing African medicine as superstition rather than science. Libraries of oral knowledge were burned, disrespected, or ignored. But truth cannot be erased. Felkin's written record stood as a witness across time. And today, historians and medical scholars are rediscovering these stories, realizing that Africa was never behind. She was, in many ways, ahead. The Bunyoro surgeons were not lucky. They were learned. They were healers who understood the principles of infection control, anatomy, and surgery, centuries before these ideas became modern. Modern analysis of Felkin's notes reveals remarkable scientific accuracy. The banana wine acted as both antiseptic and mild anesthesia. The herbal paste likely contained compounds with antibacterial properties. The iron knife sterilized in fire mimicked modern surgical sterilization. And the plant fiber sutures worked just as effectively as early European stitches. In every step, their methods align with what modern medicine recognizes today as best practice, proof that African healing systems were grounded in logic, not mysticism. For too long, the story of Africa's scientific past has been told through the eyes of outsiders. But today, we reclaim it not as a curiosity in a European journal, but as a legacy of Black excellence, ingenuity, and intellect. The surgeons of Banyoro were pioneers of medicine. Their tools may have been forged by hand, but their wisdom was centuries ahead of its time. They stood as evidence that Africa's brilliance is not a new flame. It is an eternal fire carried forward by every generation that refuses to forget. So, what does this story mean for us today? It means that Black excellence is not a modern invention. It is a continuation. It is the heartbeat of an ancient rhythm, one that built kingdoms, saved lives, and defied every limit placed upon it. It means that before colonization, before the narrative of inferiority, there was Africa, healing, creating, innovating. And that same brilliance still lives within us today. When the world tells you Africa contributed nothing to science, remember Bunyoro. Remember the surgeon who, with a steady hand and ancestral wisdom, brought life into the world and proved that genius has no color and innovation has no borders. This is my Blackness 100, where we uncover the untold truths, the forgotten brilliance, and the unstoppable power of Black history. If this story inspired you, don't just watch, share it and comment to keep this legacy alive. Because every story we tell brings us closer to what we've always been: bold, brilliant, and beautifully Black.